Hello everyone, Bashar here. We are together with New Fusion review, and this is the first Fusion review I'm doing as an official content creator, so it has some significance. So the champion in question is another Skinwalkers champion, guys. I mean, beats me because in the past like 6 months we had six or something fusions and two login champions, right? And half of them are Skinwalkers. That's a bit weird. And we had Razelwarg, we had Greatu Floriaka, we had some Wukong, and now we have this guy. I mean, one expects a little more diversity, but I mean, it is what it is. But it just, they pique my interest. So we have a legendary support champion, Magic Affinity, from the Skinwalkers faction. He's a panda, looks very nice, and he does put himself to sleep. He is an interesting champion, and he also, I think, is the only champion in the entire game that puts up the debuff, the Shogun puts, right? The Enfeeble. It is the only one in the game. So let's go over it. So it's not stated what he is dealing damage based on. It looks like, I mean, from what I can tell from seeing champions for some time, he probably is an attack based champion. So A1 is he attacks one enemy, places decreased speed with a 75% chance if you take into account the books, right? But if the original target is under 2 debuffs or more, it will attack all enemies instead, and the all enemy version has a 65% chance of placing AoE decreased speed. So this is unmatched in the game. I mean, Krisk's A1 is 50%, Mother Cybele is 50% again. 65% AoE decreased speed is, of course, extremely good. There is a little bit of condition, but I mean, you just, let's say, start with Ugo, you put block buffs and decrease speed, and bang, spread it. Because, guys, I mean, I did dive into Hydra immediately, but the thing is, AoE decreased speed is equal to Hydra in the game, right? You don't use it in too many other places, and in there it shines, so that's rather good. I mean, there are multiple ways of applying a lot of debuffs to Hydra, so this will work well almost all the time, unless you allow the Head of DK to cleanse your debuffs. And puts a sleep on this guy, and it cannot be blocked or resisted, so that is a theme for him. Every single ability that he uses puts him under a sleep debuff that can't be blocked or resisted. As you can see, I mean, it can be removed, but when we get to the passive, we'll see that that sleep is not a disadvantage bar, but rather an advantage for him. So it's pretty nice. Let's see, the second ability is attacks everyone before attacking, puts up a 30% shield on all allies, which is not bad, but it would have been, of course, better if it was the HP of this guy, right? Because let's say putting a 30% shield on Leorius or Supreme Kael won't matter too much, because those guys have 30-40k HP at best, so the shield is not very big. If it was the HP of this guy, we could have built him with a lot of HP, so the shield would have been bigger. But still, of course, guys, that's decent. And also extends the duration of buffs, which is, pretty good. You have continuous heals, you have increased defense, increased attack, block debuffs, whatever you have. Extends them. And by the way, that also, of course, means the shield is, on a 3-turn duration rather than a 2-turn, considering it gets applied before the extension happens. And then after attacking, reduces the duration of enemy buffs, and that goes if the attack lands as a wicked. So this is very Hydra material here, which means you will be able to reduce the duration of buffs on Force Affinity Hydra heads, and also should they have Poison Cloud on them, this will still work, because the way that Poison Cloud prevents this kind of stuff, the decreasing the duration of buffs, increasing the duration of debuffs, removing buffs, applying debuffs, that sort of stuff, they all need you to not weak it, right? Because debuffs are only applied during normal, strong, or critical hits, or non-weak hits, right? And the thing is, Poison Cloud makes you weak hit. That means you will not be able to apply your debuffs to the heads with a Poison Cloud on them, right? But special champions like Beveled or Contra or Bambus, right? They can apply the stuff because they have a special rule that allows them to apply debuffs on weak hits. And that is a very awful specific and weird ability. That is PvP. Also increase the value of any shield buffs on allies by 2% for each enemy buff that had its duration decreased by the skill. So let's say they have, like, the Head of Mischief stole some stuff from you and spread it, right? You reduce the duration of 12 buffs on the enemy, which means it will grow your shields by 24%. This is I don't think this, well, maybe they can try this in the Infinity team because he's a buff extender, but thing is, in an Infinity team, the enemies should not be getting buffs. And then puts up Sleep too, brings the chance up to 100% with the books, and reduces the cooldown to 4 turns. And of course, guys, when you are analyzing a fusion, as I am right now, we don't know the multipliers, so we cannot really grade the ability. So this ability could be, very high multiplier and could be very good, or it could be mediocre. So we can just analyze what it does, right? Its damage is something else. But overall, he looks like a very Hydra-esque champion now, right? AoE decrease speed there, buff extension, shield, buff duration decrease. That's not so, guys. In a proper Hydra run, they should not have any buffs, right? But it will happen every once and then. So this is good, right? And the ability to work even on weak hits is very important. That will help because in some rotations there are just too many Force Affinity heads, and as I said, sometimes Poison Cloud goes through. Being able to work through that is pretty good. It's just the cooldown is a bit long. Would have been excellent if it was on a 3-turn cooldown. And finally, we have an interesting skill. We target an enemy, we put up an increased accuracy and increased attack buff on everyone, then places an enfeeblement debuff, enfeeble debuff on the targeted enemy, which makes it weak hit all the time. So this is PvP. This is outside the domain of Hydra. Well, just the enfeeblement though. The enfeeblement cannot be placed on bosses, obviously, right? Imagine the boss weak hitting all the time. It would, allow you to just cheese the encounter. And this is the only one of its kind. So enfeeble was added to the game with the arrival of Shogun. It was unique to him, and now Bambus can also apply it. And also applies a decreased accuracy on all enemies, but this one does not go for weak hits. That's important. So only the buff duration decrease goes through weak hits. The decreased speed and the decreased accuracy stuff don't do it. And finally, he sleeps this guy again. So guys, this is a very weird, very counterintuitive ability. I mean, I'm not saying it's not powerful, but it is very, very weird. So no one is attacking no one, first of all. There is no damage involved, right? I mean, there's a lot of text and, you know, you kind of expect some damage. So we target an enemy, we buff our team, we debuff the entire enemy team, and we also do one debuff on the targeted enemy. Very weird. Very weird. I mean, as I said, very, very counterintuitive, because I mean, when you target an enemy, you kind of expect to attack him. No attacking is involved. And as I said, we buff our entire team and we debuff the entire enemy team. So this makes the job of Mischief tanking much, much, much easier, as you can imagine, considering we apply 50% decrease accuracy. So the, let's say, 350 accuracy of the Head of Mischief goes down to 175, which means you will be able to tank him easily with 300 resistance, and that is rather achievable, especially if you have something like Öla Grazur that puts up an increased resistance buff, right? I mean, imagine you have the increased resistance, you have decreased accuracy, and you will not be debuffed by anyone, right? That is rather good. You know, the head of the poison head of Blight will not be able to poison you. The head of Suffering will not be able to place his debuffs. It is a good combination, but of course increased resistance is a bit of a rare buff, right? Not many champions have it. So I mean, this ability I find it a little hard to evaluate, because guys, I mean, it feels very wrong that it's not attacking, right? And in Hydra, you sometimes use them, but you generally want damaging abilities, right? Because, I mean, at some point you will start dying, so you rather want to, you know, deal damage with every single turn that you take. But the overall effect is not bad. And thing is, I don't really like increase attack and therefore attack based damages in Hydra too much. I'm not talking about, you know, Ugo or Nekmotar, you know, those are not damaging champions. I mean, the increased attack buff will of course help their damage, but they are not the real damage dealers. Because the problem is, if you bring an attack based champion, you have to go very high on the attack, crit damage, most of the time accuracy as well. So survival becomes an issue, right? Because you cannot bring champions in their PvP kit, right? You cannot bring a 6.5k attack, 300 crit damage Savage champion to Hydra, because he will just die, right? Imagine. And most of the time you will have like 30k HP and 2k defense, and they will die in the first stiff breeze that comes their way. So you have to have some survivability, and that's why I don't like attack champions too much. Defense and HP based are good because their main resource also makes them survive, right? So you bring Artak there, you bring Nut there, you bring Krisk there, you bring Michinaki there, you bring Harima there. All of them are tanky, right? By nature, because their main stat gives them survival. And therefore, I don't like bringing attack-based champions too much to Hydra, so I also, therefore, as a consequence, don't like bringing... I mean, I don't think increased attack buff is very important, because it does increase the damage of, you know, champions that don't deal too much damage already. And so the exception I have been able to find is, you know, Razelvarg. So my personal experience is Razelvarg is the only exception to this, because guys, if you bring an attack based champion in Hydra, they generally deal damage based off their, you know, debuffs. For example, let's say Sisia, right? Well, Sisia is not nuking the enemy's faces, she does put up the HP burns and she triggers them. That is her main source of damage. I mean, I wouldn't say increased attack won't be helping, but you cannot go crazy on attack if you bring a Sisia, right? She needs some survival. She needs some defense and HP because you cannot afford to accept her dying all the time. But overall, it's still, I think, good. You know, increased accuracy will allow you to bring a little bit lower accuracies. And also, guys, it's also important that how you change your teams is very important. So if you have rock solid teams that you do not change from rotation to rotation, then you can actually go for really low accuracies, right? So you could build your champions with like 200 accuracy because this guy will take it up to 300. If you are going for nightmare, you can go for 250 or so accuracy because it will be brought up to 375. But the thing is, if those low accuracy champions are somehow separated from their increased accuracy counterparts, right, then you get screwed because your accuracy is not enough and you will not be able to debuff, right? So you need Lady Kimi, Bambus, Archbishop Pintroy, Razelvarg, that kind of, increased accuracy champions. So, buyer beware, right? Be careful if you are going to build your champions with low accuracy so they are more survivable, they deal more damage. Keep in mind that you cannot separate them from the increased accuracy fellows. Let's go to the final stage of his kit. He has a passive, so when he's asleep, he has a 50% chance of transferring any debuffs placed on your team to himself. So let's say, the guy does some sort of, decreased defense on your Siphi, right? And this guy is asleep. So there is a 50% chance that decreased defense will get applied to Bambus. I'm not very sure of what happens in the case of existing debuffs. I'm guessing it will still try to transfer it to himself, and it will not transfer the hard CC debuffs like stun, freeze, true fear, fear, provoke, petrification, and it does say block revive. That's interesting because block revive is not an actual debuff. It is an instant ability, right? It doesn't require accuracy. Well, I suppose. And finally, as you can expect, we are not going to use him once every 2 turns. He removes any sleeps from himself at the beginning of his turn. So, he does something, he starts sleeping, and if the enemy doesn't hit him, he will transfer the debuffs that you receive to himself with a 50% chance. And thing is, the final part, if he is asleep at the beginning of his turn, and he gets his sleep removed with his passive, he takes all of his debuffs and transfers it to the enemy with the highest resistance, and the ability cannot be resisted. So let's say, guys, you have received some poisons, you have transferred some poisons to this guy, you have received decreased defense, weaken something, right? He has like, let's say 8 debuffs, but he was not attacked at all, right? So he's asleep. So at the beginning of its turn, I don't know how this works, by the way, because if he has poisons, he will be receiving poison damage at the beginning of his turn. So I don't know how this works. It could be his passive working and immediately transferring everything, or it could be he takes damage from the poison first and wakes up and therefore is not able to transfer. My guess is on the former, right? He just transferred without taking damage from the poison, but it will rely on how it's programmed. He also has a 25% HP aura, which is mediocre for a legendary. Right? Tyrant Extremor has that level, and it goes up to 33% for legendaries. I think the mythical one has a little bit higher aura, but that's the general, that's the maxed HP aura before the addition of mythicals to the game. So we have 1A1 that applies a decreased speed to all enemies if the original target is under 2 debuffs with a 65% chance, and you can grab the Master Hexer, I think, Mastery to have an increased 5% chance, which is very good, right? 70%. Then you have the shield buff plus the duration of buff extension on your side and buff duration reduce on the enemy side. And finally we have the increased accuracy and increased attack buff on our side, decreased accuracy on the enemy side, and also enfeeblement on the specific targeted enemy. So this does bring a PvP use to this guy, right? Imagine, there's a Kendraff on there, boom, you apply it, and that is rather big. Imagine he just weakens, right? So I suppose you could build them for both high speed, high accuracy, and the good thing is he does apply the increased accuracy first. So if you build this guy with 500 accuracy, he will have 750 accuracy when he's applying the enfeeble debuff. And a good thing is, so I did criticize it for not doing damage in Hydra, but in PvP it's good, right? Because there will be no weak hits, right? He will place this debuff. The only way for the enemy to get rid of that enfeeblement, to not receive the enfeeble debuff, is just resisting, right? And imagine, guys, a nuker is generally not very well known for their higher resistance, right? So you have a proper debuffer with an increased accuracy buff, and that means the debuff will get placed, right? 400 accuracy will go up to 600 accuracy. Imagine, guys, a damaging guy resisting a debuff with a 600 accuracy. So the only chance that they will resist this will be the the base 3% that cannot be dodged. Other than that, yeah. So this ability is quite PvP, guys, because in PvP, most of the time there is a single damager, right? And this guy is able to take care of that single damager all the time. They have to have stone skin. They have to have block debuffs, right? They have to be in veil. Otherwise, they are just screwed, right? This guy plays, bang, the debuff gets applied, and it's a huge problem, right? Imagine your only ethos is doing weak hits for the first 2 turns, and with weak hits you are not killing anyone, obviously. So yeah, it has some value. So overall, for upcoming accounts, mid game, early mid game, mid late game, this guy can be definitely used in Hydra. If you don't need any help in Hydra, he can be used in PvP to disable their damager. But of course you have to give a lot of speed to him. So accuracy will not be a question, I think, because as I said, you will be trying to put the enfeeble on damagers with an increased accuracy, more or less. So it will happen, right? But you have to go first, because if they nuke you, that won't have any meaning. So we will be seeing the fusion calendar soon, I think. And I think it's a fusion, so we will grab the 16 rares. We will be fusing the 16 rares into 4 epics and the 4 epics into Bambus, and it will be starting on the 28th or something, if the fusion warm-up is anything to go by. So that's it, I think, guys. So see you on the fusion and see you on the stream. Bye bye.